So this is week 3 of our algebra classes at Peer2Peer. What is a system of equations? So a system of equations is a set of equations where you can try and find whether the lines cross or not. So these systems can use quadratics, they can use polynomials of all kinds, and they can also use linear equations. So today we're mostly going to be talking about linear equations. And so you can see on the right, linear lines which have the same slopes. These systems, if they're parallel, that means that they're never going to cross, and that also means that they won't have a solution. And then, so since a solution to a system of equations is the point where the two lines or more intersect, you can see in this graph where like the blue line and the red line, they both cross together. I don't think you can really see it, but the coordinate of the point where they cross, so the coordinate of the solution is 2, 2. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, sounds good. So if the equations in the system are identical, that means that there's an infinite amount of solutions. That's because the lines, like, theoretically will cross every time, you know, if that makes sense. So you can see how in this graph that I graphed in Desmos, the red line is y equals 3x plus 1, and then the blue line is 2y equals 6x plus 2. And then I hope you can see the graph. So basically you can't like differentiate either line because the red line just maps right onto the blue line. So that's why you just see that purple line. So mostly we're going to be just talking about like linear equations like in a system. So you won't really need this less than or equal to signs or any of that. But I think it's really important to know this, especially going forward where we'll definitely be using more of these symbols. So let's get back to solving systems of equations. So there are 3 main ways to solve them. The first way is by graphing them, like using Desmos or a calculator, or you can do it by hand too, and just graphing like the lines out. The other way is elimination, and then the third way is substitution. We're mostly going to try to talk about the last two, the elimination, substitution, because those 2 ways are usually the fastest. Okay, so let's go back to graphing. So you can see that we have 2 equations. The red one is y equals 5x plus 3, and the blue one is y equals negative 1/3 x plus 3. So looking at this graph, what is the solution to this system of equations? Since it's graphed out for you, it should be pretty obvious to find it. So feel free to unmute yourselves if you see it.
0,2.
0,
No,
I think
3,
it's
3.
Yeah. So yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult with graphing. 0, 3. So now we're going to talk about the second way to solve systems of equations. So the second way is elimination. So you can see you have these 2 equations here. They're in standard form, not linear form. Not slope-intercept form. And you can see where you have the 2x and the negative 2x. So 2x and negative 2x are going to cancel out. So that being said, does anybody have any ideas on how to solve this? There are no wrong answers here. Go ahead. If anybody has any ideas to solve it. Nobody?
So right now this is in standard form.
Yeah. But when I prefer using standard form to solve systems of equations, but in reality, you can use both. It doesn't really matter. Does anybody have any ideas?
You cancel out.
Yeah. So they cancel out, and that's how you'll be able to find your y. And then that's basically how you can like plug them both in and try to find your final solution. So when they cancel out the 2x and the negative 2x, it comes out to 0 minus y equals 2. And then you get y equals negative 2. So that's, remember, that's your y coordinate of your solution. And then you plug the y back into the original equation. And it doesn't matter which one of the equations in the system that you use, but you have to use an original equation, if that makes sense. So let's plug in the y equals negative 2. And then, so you see, I decided to use the first equation of the system. So it would be 2x plus 7 times negative 2, where the y is, equals 4. And then you simplify, so you get 2x minus 14 equals 4. And then 2x equals 18, divide by 2, and you get x equals 9. So that's why your final, once you put it all together, your final equation should be 9, negative 2. Does anybody have any questions? Am I going too fast for you guys, or? Okay, let's just move on then. So you can see here, graphing, especially if you have a calculator, is a really good way to double check your answer. So here, I just graphed out both of them in Desmos, and then the system gave me a solution of 9, negative 2. So also going forward, especially when you take algebra in school, a lot of teachers won't actually let you use a graphing calculator while doing systems, because they want you to actually know how to do the other two ways, elimination and substitution. So now we're gonna look at substitution. On a side note, on my screen, it's showing out some of the words that are wiped out. Is that showing up on your guys' screens?
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try to figure it out. Give me a moment. Okay. Okay, is that better now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. If that happens again, feel free to just unmute yourselves and tell me, because I can't really see the chat when I'm sharing my screen. So yeah, okay. So now we're going to continue doing some substitution, sorry. And so you can see that you have your system here, 2x plus 7y equals 1, y equals 4x minus 8. So for this question, they actually give you the solution, the solution to this system. And so you have to check whether that's the right solution or if it's the wrong solution. And if it's not the right solution, you have to find out the actual solution. So does anybody have any ideas to solve this? If not, you can look at the lower right-hand corner. Okay. So in the lower right-hand corner, I have the first hint for part A. So the hint says plug back into the system. So in order to double check whether 4H is a solution to the system, you would just plug it back in. You have to plug it into both equations of the system just because it might work for one of them, but then it might not work for the other. You want to make sure that it works for both lines, so then it's actually the solution. And then for part B, we would try substitution, right? So then we would try plugging in 4H. And if one of those, one of the numbers actually worked, but then we would work. the y equals 4x minus 8 into the 7y, if that makes sense. So for this, let's just test out 4, 8 for part A, right? So we would do 2 times 4, which is the x coordinate of the solution, and then you can try 2 times 4 plus 7 times 8 does not equal 1. So that's how you know right off the bat that it's not a solution. And then for part B, I don't have the solution written out to solve this question, but you would just plug in y equals 4x and plug in 4x minus 8 as the y here. So it would be 2x plus 7y. Sorry, 2x plus 7 times 4x minus 8 equals 1. So here's another substitution question. So like, I know I didn't really go in depth with the last substitution question, but does anybody have any ideas to solve this question? It's also a substitution question. Go ahead.
You substitute
Mhm.
2x plus 1 for y.
Yeah. So it would be x minus parentheses 2x plus 1 parentheses equals -3. Okay, so I have all of it written out here. So it would be x minus, like, I think, is your name Sharad? Okay, so it would be x minus 2x plus 1 in the parentheses, right, equals -3. So you can see that, like, this equation is basically like a skeleton of the second equation of the system. So then you simplify it, and then you, okay, simplify it. So it'd be x minus 2x minus 1 equals -3. X minus, yeah, and then negative x equals -2, divide by -1, and then x equals 2. And then you have to remember to plug in the x to one of the 2 original equations. And then I picked the first one. So y equals 2 times 2 plus 1. And then you simplify that to equal y equals 4 plus 1, and then y equals 5. So your final answer should be 2, 5. Does that make sense? If you have questions, feel free to ask. Is like the eraser thing like showing up on your screen again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I have no idea either. Let me try again. Okay. So again, you could graph it in Desmos. So y equals 2x plus 1, x minus y equals -3, and then graph it to get your solution of 2, 5. So using what we know about systems of equations, we can also use like that concept of systems of equations to answer word problems. So if you have like a pencil and paper next to you, it would be great if you could like solve this out before I show you how to solve it. So I'll give you guys 2 minutes or so, and then you guys can try doing this system. Okay, does anybody have any ideas on how to solve this? Or if you've set up, if you set up like any equations? Anybody? Okay, so if not, I'll just go over this with you guys. So in 36 years, Ishan will be 3 times as old as he is right now. So let's say that Ishan is Z years old right now. Can everybody see that? What I just wrote?
Yes.
Okay. So Z. Okay. So in 36 years, so 36 years in the future, Ishan's age would be Z plus 36, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So in 36 years, Ishan will be 3 times as old as he is right now. So if he's Z years old right now, it would be Z times 3 equals Z plus 36, right? So then we could simplify this. 3Z equals Z plus, and then 2Z equals 36. And then you would just divide both sides by 2. And then you would get 18 years old. So I guess like this wasn't really like a system in the strongest sense, but like it's really important to know how to construct these equations and be able to use them together. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay. How do I clear this? Okay, there we go. So here's another question with Ishan. Ishan is 3 times as old as Christopher and is also 14 years older than Christopher. So how old is Ishan? So for this, we would do the same thing. We would write, like, not really like a system, but like construct a pair of linear equations. So if you have pencil and paper right next to you, feel free to try this problem. Oh, okay. So have I given you guys enough time to try this? Does anybody have any concerns or questions? Okay, then. So Okay. So Ishan is 3 times as old as Christopher and is also 14 years older than Christopher. So let's set a variable. It can be anything. What about X for Ishan? Okay, so X is 3 times as old as Christopher and is also 14 years older than Christopher. So X equals, and then let's just put 3C. C for Christopher, okay? So X equals 3C because Ishan is 3 times as old as Christopher. And then, but the problem also tells us Ishan is also 14 years older than Christopher. So it would be X equals 14 plus C. So for now, we just basically wrote a system, right? So for this question, I would personally just do elimination. So then you would do like that. And then it would be, okay, 17 plus C equals 0. And then you found Christopher, right? But then you have to find, sorry, I think I made a mistake. But like, oh my God. But the answer is 21 years old. Okay. So now we're just gonna move on to systems of equations, word problems. So this is our, oh my goodness. This is our system of equations, word problems. So the question is, okay, I didn't finish. Chevy has some yarn that he wants to use to make hats and scarves. Each hat uses 0.2 kilograms of yarn, and each scarf uses 0.1 kilograms of yarn. Chevy wants to use 2 kilograms of yarn to make a total of 15 items. Let H be the number of hats Chevy makes, and S be the number of scarves he makes. So I forgot to put in transition right here. So that's why you can see the systems like the answer already. But we can still go back and look over why the system works. So for this sentence, each hat uses 0.2 kilograms of yarn and each scarf uses 0.1 kilograms of yarn. So we can set the variables. So H is the number of hats Chevy makes and S is the number of scarves he makes. So where this sentence says, each hat uses 0.2 kilograms of yarn and each scarf uses 0.1 kilograms of yarn. So that's where we got this equation, because since each hat uses 0.2 kilograms of yarn and we don't know how many hats Chevy wants to make, the H goes right here. And then you have the 0.1, which is each scarf uses 0.1 kilograms of yarn, and that's where the S comes from. But we also have to remember that he wants to make a total of 15 items. So the 15 goes right here because H and S are the quantities of the hats and scarves respectively, and the 2 kilograms of yarn is how much he can use to get the 2 right here. Does that make sense? Okay. What is that? Did you guys like see that where like the wiping thing happened again?
Yes.
Is someone like using the board or something? Because like, if you want to write something or like help me solve the equation, that's great.
I saw that.
But like, just please don't. Thanks. Okay, so we have another system right here. Avery uses a blend of dark chocolate and milk chocolate to make the ice cream topping at her restaurant. She wants to buy 10 kilograms more of the dark chocolate than the milk chocolate, and she needs 150 kilograms of chocolate in total for her next order. Let D be the number of kilograms of dark chocolate he buys, and M be the number of kilograms of milk chocolate she buys. So I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to try this equation, the system. Okay, has everybody tried? Oh my goodness. Guys, whoever's like writing on the board, can you like not? Like if you want to solve it, that's great. But actually that's great. Like if you really want to solve it, go for it. But like don't write on the board. Okay, I hope that was enough time for you guys to try this. So does anybody have any ideas or any equations that they came up with? And if you do, feel free to write it on the board. Anybody? Okay, let's just get started. So in order to write this equation, so this is the answer for those of you who wanted to check for those of you, okay. So for those of you who wanted to check your answers, so basically in order to solve this, okay, so Avery uses a blend of dark chocolate, blah, blah, blah. So she uses 10 kilograms more of dark chocolate than milk chocolate. So let's set up our variables. D is the number of kilograms of dark chocolate he buys, and M is the number of kilograms of milk chocolate she buys. Or yeah, and then, so it would be D, which is the dark chocolate, equals M plus 10, because we have the sentence, she wants to buy 10 kilograms more of dark chocolate than milk chocolate. So D, or dark chocolate, has to be 10 greater than milk chocolate, which is your M, right? And then, and she needs 150 kilograms of chocolate in total for her next order. So if D is the number of kilograms of dark chocolate in total, and then M is the number of kilograms of milk chocolate in total, you would add the D and the M to get 150. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Okay, so for this problem, I want you guys to try doing it on your own first, again. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. Okay, I hope that was enough time to solve it. So I disabled your guys' annotations thing. So, but like if you want to solve it with me or like show us how to solve it, like feel free to ask. But yeah. Okay, so did you guys have any ideas on how to solve it? Anybody? Okay, so did none of you guys, were none of you guys able to solve it? I'm sure some of you were able to solve it. Any ideas? Okay, if not, I'll just show you guys how to solve it then. Okay, so for those of you who did try to solve it, which I don't think were any of you, so an okapi weighs 290 kilograms and a llama weighs 160 kilograms. So, okay, so this is how you solve this equation. So let's just read it together first. The combined average weight of an okapi and a llama is 450 kilograms. The average weight of 3 llamas is 190 kilograms more than the average weight of 1 okapi. So let's set in our set up our variables. So our variables are x. Oh crap. So our variables are x, which is the average okapi's weight, and then y, which is our average llama's weight. So these are our equations. X plus y equals 450, and this linear equation comes from the first sentence, where it says the combined average weight of an okapi and a llama is 450 kilograms. And then for our second equation, it's x plus 190 equals 3y. The average weight of 3 llamas is 190 kilograms more than the average weight of 1 okapi. So, and then since we have our system, like we wrote both equations out. For me, I think the easiest way to solve this is through elimination. And so you can see that like when, oh crap. So you can see how like when you're eliminating with this system that we wrote, you have the x's and they cancel out, right? So then you're left with y minus 190 equals 450 minus 3y. And then, so then you just continue to simplify, and then you have negative 190 equals 450 minus 4y. And then negative 640 equals negative 4y. And then you divide by negative 4 to get y equals 160. And then we plug in the y equals 160 into, I plugged it back in the first equation because I just thought that was easiest, but yeah. And then that's where, so you plug it back into the first equation, and then you get 450 minus 160 equals 290. So that's how we got our first answer, sorry. We could also, does anybody have any questions before we move on? You could also graph this, like these equations, or like just the system in Desmos, but yeah. Okay. So here's another system that I want you guys to try. Oh, not so good. Okay, so yeah, so there's a really helpful formula. I'm not sure if you guys know it, but it's in the top right-hand corner, and it says distance equals speed times time. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to try this on your own. Hopefully you guys really try it this time. I'd really appreciate like participation in these lessons, because sometimes it just feels like I'm talking to myself, and I know that like I already know this stuff, right? So I don't need to be here, but I'd really appreciate you guys showed a little more effort. Okay, so before I ask one of you guys to help me solve it, I want to jump back to this equation, distance equals speed times time. I'm not sure if any of you guys have ever been exposed to this equation, but I want to go over it before we start with the system. So here's just a problem, right? So let's just say that your distance is 5 miles, okay? And then you are walking 5 miles per hour. How long did you walk? So we want to fill in this. Does anybody have any idea? remember 5 miles per hour is our speed. And then 5 is our distance. Does anybody know our time? Okay, so our time would be 1 hour, right? Because when you're going 5 miles per hour, and then you only, like when you're, let's just say you're walking 5 miles per hour, and you only walk for 1 hour, you're only gonna go 5 miles. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to anybody? If it doesn't make sense, I can go like in depth. Okay, then hopefully all of you guys get that. But with that in mind, let's go for this system. So Eudora ran from her home to her secret laboratory at an average speed of 12 kilometers per hour. She then took one of her jetpacks and flew to her school at an average speed of 76 kilometers per hour. Eudora traveled a total distance of 120 kilometers, and the entire trip took 2 hours. So, like we did for the Okapi and Llama question, we're gonna set up some variables, right? So x, like our x is going to be time in hours Eudora spends running, and then y is going to be our time in hours she spends flying. So from the first sentence where it says Eudora ran from home like at an average speed of 12 kilometers per hour, that's where we get the 12 in this equation, in our first equation, 12x, and then plus 76y, and that 76y, the 76 specifically, is the average speed where she flew. So that's where we get the y from, and then equals 120, which is our distance. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna assume it makes sense, so like, feel free to ask any questions later. So then x plus y equals our 2 hours. And then from here, you can use substitution or elimination. You could graph it if you had access to a graphing calculator, but we're not gonna use one today. And then this is where we get down to business. So negative 12x plus negative 12y equals negative 12 times 2, and then you have the negative 12x minus 12y equals negative 24, and then that's how you eliminate the x. And then 12x plus 76y equals 120, and then negative 12x minus 12y equals negative 24, and then that's where you simplify to get 64y equals 96, and then y equals 1.5, and x equals 0.5. And then just like make sure you don't confuse your variables. So if x is if x is our time in hours she spent running, so that means Eudora spent 0.5 hours running, and then she flew for 1.5 hours, which is our y, using her jetpack. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So as you see, like you can double check your answer if you have access to a graphing calculator. So I just like graphed it. It's like kind of obvious. And then I just plugged in, well, like the calculator basically gave me 0.5, 1.5. And like, just like remember your X and Y and like differentiate the two and make sure you just don't get confused. So we're gonna recap our class. So today we learned how to solve by substitution, elimination, and graphing. And then we also learned about no solution, one solution, and infinite solutions. in systems of equations, and then we went pretty in depth with word problems with systems of equations. And then, yeah, we didn't really go over compound inequalities, but maybe we'll go over that next time or in the future. Does anybody have any questions? I know I went really fast with this, kind of, so if you're confused, now's the time to ask. Also, if you're not confused at all, the homework and the slides from today are posted onto Google Classroom, so if you want to get started on that. Does anybody have any questions before we end class today?
No.
Okay. Well, okay, so if that's everything, feel free to email Peer2Peer if you have any questions, or you can leave a comment on Google Classroom and I'll be sure to answer as soon as I can. If that is all, I think that's everything. I hope I explained everything clearly enough. I probably didn't, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you're really confused, you can also schedule a tutoring session with Peer2Peer, so you can go over it one-on-one with a tutor. If that's everything, you guys are free to leave. Try to remember to do your homework. If not, it's okay. It's a pretty short homework assignment, and it's posted on Google Classroom. You guys are free to leave if you need to go, but yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining.
Bye. Thank you.
Close.